I watched my mother-in-law Eleanor stir something into my mashed potatoes when she thought no one was looking. A fine white powder from a small vial she kept hidden in her palm, dissolving instantly into the butter and cream. My heart stopped. My hands gripped the edge of the kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned white. 26 years she'd hated me. 26 years of passive-aggressive comments, of being excluded from family photos, of watching her try to turn my own husband against me. But this was murder. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it's traveled. Because what happened next at that Thanksgiving dinner, the plate I switched, the ambulance that came screaming up the driveway, and the confession that spilled out in front of 17 horrified family members, exposed a truth that had been buried for decades. My name is Miranda. I'm 52 years old and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm a pediatric nurse, a mother of 3, and until that Thanksgiving day in 2022, I thought my mother-in-law's hatred was just an unfortunate family dynamic we all had to endure. I was wrong. She didn't just hate me. She wanted me dead. The kitchen was chaos. Steam rising from the turkey, the sweet smell of candied yams mixing with sage stuffing. 17 family members crammed into Eleanor's sprawling colonial house for the annual Whitmore Thanksgiving. I'd been assigned my usual role, kitchen helper, never the honored guest, never seated at the main table with Eleanor's real family. Always the servant, the outsider, the woman who wasn't good enough for her precious son. I was carrying the green bean casserole to the dining room when I saw her. Eleanor was standing at the counter, her back to me, hunched over my plate. The one with the small chip on the rim that she always gave me, never the good china. Her hand moved quickly, precisely, sprinkling something from a tiny glass vial into my food. Then she tucked the vial back into her cardigan pocket, smoothed the potatoes with a spoon to hide any evidence, and turned around. Our eyes met. For one suspended moment, neither of us moved. Her face went pale, then flushed red. But then, and this is what chilled me to my core, she smiled. A cold, satisfied smile that said, "I dare you to say something. No one will believe you anyway." She was right about that part. No one ever believed me when I complained about Eleanor. My husband Thomas would say, "That's just how Mom is. She means well." His siblings would laugh it off. "Mom's from a different generation. You're too sensitive, Miranda." Even my own children had been charmed by their grandmother's generous gifts and sweet old lady act. But I knew the truth. I'd known it for 26 years, since the day Thomas brought me home to meet his family. Eleanor had taken one look at me, a nursing student from a working-class family in North Charleston, and decided I was unworthy. Thomas could have had anyone, she'd told her friends at our engagement party, loud enough for me to hear. And he chose that, like I was a thing. An unfortunate stain on the Whitmore family tapestry. I set down the green bean casserole with trembling hands. Eleanor was already moving past me, carrying the poisoned plate toward the dining room. "Miranda, dear," she said in that syrupy, sweet voice she used in front of others. "This is your plate. I made your potatoes extra special today. Extra butter, just how you like them. Extra poison," she meant. I followed her into the dining room, my mind racing. The long mahogany table was set beautifully. Eleanor's grandmother's china, crystal glasses catching the afternoon light, a centerpiece of burgundy chrysanthemums. Thomas was already seated at the head of the table, talking football with his brother. My 3 kids, Jennifer, Marcus, and little Sophie, were arguing over who got to sit next to Grandma Eleanor. My sister-in-law Diane was pouring wine. Everything looked so normal, so perfectly Whitmore. Eleanor placed the poisoned plate at my usual spot, the far end of the table, closest to the kitchen, where I could jump up to fetch things when needed. The servant's seat. "Everyone, please sit," Eleanor announced, clapping her hands. "Thomas, would you say grace?" They all sat. I remained standing, staring at my plate. The mashed potatoes looked innocent enough. Creamy, butter-pooled, garnished with a sprig of parsley. But I knew what was in them. I'd seen her put it there. My thoughts raced. Should I say something now? Accuse her in front of everyone? But what if I was wrong? What if it was just salt or sugar, and I looked like a paranoid fool? Eleanor would play the victim. Poor Miranda, she's always been so hostile toward me. And I'd be the villain of Thanksgiving 2022. No, I needed proof. I needed her to take the fall for her own evil plan. An idea formed, dangerous and desperate. Eleanor, I said sweetly, you've worked so hard on this meal. Why don't you sit in my spot today? You deserve the place of honor, and I can sit here by the kitchen where I can help serve. Everyone looked at me in surprise. Eleanor's smile faltered for just a second. Oh no, dear. That's your seat. I couldn't possibly... I insist, I said, already moving around the table. I picked up my plate, the poisoned one, and set it at the head of the table, across from Thomas. Then I took Eleanor's plate from her place setting and moved it to my spot. Please, after all these years of hosting us, you should have the best seat, Thomas beamed. That's thoughtful, honey. Mom, sit down. Let Miranda take care of you for once. Eleanor's face went through several emotions. Panic, anger, calculation. But with 17 pairs of eyes watching her, expecting her to graciously accept this gesture, she had no choice. She sat down stiffly in my chair, right in front of the poisoned plate. I sat in her spot and watched her stare at those mashed potatoes. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for her wine glass. She knew. Oh, she knew exactly what was on that plate. Thomas said grace, a long, rambling prayer thanking God for family and abundance. I didn't hear a word. I was watching Eleanor, whose face had gone from red to pale to almost green. She kept glancing at the potatoes, then at me, then back at the potatoes. Amen, everyone said in unison. Let's eat, Thomas declared. The table erupted in the usual Thanksgiving chaos. Platters passing, forks clinking, laughter and conversation flowing. I took a bite of turkey from Eleanor's plate. Perfectly cooked. Completely safe. I felt almost giddy with the irony. Eleanor wasn't eating. She pushed food around her plate, avoiding the mashed potatoes entirely. Mom, you're not eating, Diane observed. Are you feeling okay? I'm fine, Eleanor said tightly. Just not very hungry. Not hungry? On Thanksgiving? Thomas laughed. Mom, you've been cooking for 2 days. You have to eat something. I'll eat later, Eleanor insisted. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. Eleanor, you should really try those potatoes. You said you made them extra special. It would be a shame to waste them. Her hand tightened on her fork. The look she gave me could have curdled milk. Yes, Mom, Thomas agreed, oblivious to the silent war happening across his turkey. Your mashed potatoes are always the best. Miranda's right. You should at least taste them. I'm really not, Eleanor began. Mom. Thomas's voice took on a slightly firmer edge. You're being rude. Miranda gave up her seat for you, and now you won't even eat the food? What's going on? 17 family members were now watching Eleanor, waiting. The pressure was building, visible in the tension of her shoulders, the tightness around her mouth. She looked trapped. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. She scooped up a tiny amount of mashed potatoes on her fork. Her hand trembled. She brought it to her mouth, hesitated, then set the fork back down. I can't. I'm sorry, I just can't. Eleanor, I said quietly, what's wrong with the potatoes? Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw pure hatred, but also fear. She knew I'd seen her. She knew I knew. Nothing's wrong with them, she said. Her voice strained. Then eat them, I said simply. The table had gone quiet now, everyone sensing the strange tension, but not understanding it. Thomas looked between his mother and me, confused. What is going on? I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I reached into my purse. I'd brought it to the table, unusual for me, but I'd had a feeling, and pulled out my phone. About 20 minutes ago, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I saw Eleanor put something into my mashed potatoes, a white powder from a small vial. When she saw that I'd caught her, she smiled at me. Then she served me that plate specifically. The room exploded. Everyone started talking at once. Thomas shot to his feet. Miranda, what the hell are you saying? I'm saying your mother tried to poison me. That's insane, Diane gasped. Mom would never... Thomas started. Then let her eat them, I interrupted. my voice cutting through the chaos. If there's nothing wrong with those potatoes, let her eat them right now. All eyes turned to Eleanor. She sat frozen, her face the color of old newspaper. This is ridiculous, she stammered. Miranda is paranoid. She's always hated me. Eat them. I said each word clearly, distinctly. I don't have to prove anything to. What's in your cardigan pocket, Eleanor? I asked. Her hand instinctively moved to her pocket, then stopped. A tell. Everyone saw it. Thomas moved toward his mother, his face a mask of confusion and growing horror. Mom, what's in your pocket? Nothing. It's nothing, but Thomas was already reaching for her cardigan. Eleanor tried to pull away, but he was faster. He pulled out a small glass vial, no bigger than his thumb. Inside was a fine white powder, maybe a teaspoon left. The room went deadly silent. What is this? Thomas's voice shook. Eleanor's face crumpled. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered 26 years of cruelty, 26 years of being made to feel less than, 26 years of being that. It's just... Eleanor couldn't finish. Thomas unscrewed the vial and smelled it. His face went pale. This smells like almonds. Mom, is this... He couldn't even say it. I knew that smell. I was a nurse. I'd studied toxicology. It's cyanide, I said quietly. Or something cyanide-based. Enough to kill someone if ingested. Jennifer started crying. Marcus pulled Sophie close to him, shielding her. Diane looked like she might faint. The rest of the family sat in stunned, horrified silence. You tried to kill Miranda? Thomas's voice broke on the last word. Mom, you tried to murder my wife? Eleanor's face hardened. The mask of the sweet elderly mother cracked and fell away, revealing something cold and mean underneath. She ruined your life, Eleanor hissed. You could have married Caroline Pemberton. You could have had the life you deserved. But instead you chose this nobody from nowhere. She trapped you with a pregnancy. I wasn't pregnant when we got married. I interrupted, shocked. You got pregnant 6 months later. Convenient timing. We wanted children. You wanted his money, his name. His status. Eleanor's voice was rising, years of bottled resentment pouring out. You've been living off the Whitmore name for 26 years, playing the devoted wife while bleeding him dry. You're not good enough for him. You never were. And I've had to watch you parade around playing Lady of the Manor when you're nothing but... Enough! Thomas slammed his hand on the table. I'd never seen him so angry. Don't you dare. Don't you dare talk about Miranda like that. Eleanor looked at her son, and something in her face shifted. She suddenly seemed to realize what she'd said, what she'd revealed. Thomas, I didn't mean... You tried to poison her, Thomas said flatly. You were going to kill her. At Thanksgiving, in front of our children. Were you just going to watch her die? Watch the kids watch their mother die? Eleanor had no answer to that. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. Yes, I need police and an ambulance at 847 Magnolia Drive. There's been an attempted poisoning. The next 30 minutes were surreal. The police arrived first. 2 officers who looked way too young to be dealing with attempted murder on Thanksgiving. Then the paramedics. They secured the vial, photographed the plate of poisoned potatoes, took statements from everyone who'd witnessed the confrontation. Eleanor tried to claim I'd framed her, that I'd put the poison in her pocket, but too many people had seen her hand go instinctively to that pocket when I asked about it. Too many people had heard her hateful confession. And when the police checked her recent purchases, they found she'd ordered rat poison containing cyanide from a hardware store 3 weeks earlier. For mice in the basement, she'd told the clerk. The paramedics insisted on checking her vital signs, standard procedure for someone in crisis. Eleanor's blood pressure was dangerously high, spike of stress and guilt, probably. They wanted to take her to the hospital for observation. I'm not going anywhere, Eleanor insisted, but her voice was weak now, defeated. Then, and I still don't know if this was karma or coincidence, Eleanor suddenly clutched her chest. Her face went gray. She gasped for air. Mom! Thomas lunged for her as she collapsed. The paramedics jumped into action. Heart attack, possibly stress-induced. They had her on a gurney in minutes. Oxygen mask on. IV in her arm. The ambulance that had come for a potential poisoning victim ended up taking the poisoner instead. "I'll ride with her," Thomas said, his face ashen. "No," I heard myself say. "You stay with the kids. They need you." "I'll go." Everyone stared at me. After everything Eleanor had done, I was volunteering to go to the hospital with her. Thomas looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "Miranda, you don't have to—" "I'm a nurse," I said simply. "And despite everything, she's my children's grandmother. I'll make sure she's okay. You stay here and explain this to the kids." I rode in the ambulance with Eleanor, watching the paramedics work on her. She was conscious, but barely. At one point, our eyes met. Hers were full of tears. "Why?" she whispered around the oxygen mask. "Why did you—" "Switch the plates?" I leaned close so only she could hear. "Because I'm not a murderer," I said quietly. "Unlike you, I wanted you exposed, not dead. I wanted everyone to see who you really are, and now they do." A tear rolled down her wrinkled cheek. "I really do. Hate you." "I know," I said. "You've made that very clear for 26 years. She closed her eyes. "Thomas will never forgive me." "Probably not," I agreed. "You tried to kill his wife. You traumatized your grandchildren. You ruined Thanksgiving for 17 people. All because you couldn't accept that your son loved someone you deemed beneath you." I paused. "Was it worth it, Eleanor? Was your pride worth losing your family?" She didn't answer. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe the truth was too painful. At the hospital, doctors confirmed she'd had a moderate heart attack, likely triggered by the extreme stress of being caught. They admitted her to the cardiac unit. The police stationed an officer outside her room. She was under arrest for attempted murder, but they'd wait until she was medically stable to formally book her. I stayed until Thomas arrived with his siblings. Then I went home to my children. Jennifer met me at the door, her eyes swollen from crying. "Mom, is Grandma going to die?" "No, baby," I said, pulling her into my arms. "She had a heart attack, but she's going to be okay physically." "Why did she try to hurt you?" Sophie asked in a small voice. She was only 9, too young to understand this kind of hatred. I sat down with all 3 of my kids and told them a version of the truth that they could handle. That sometimes people carry anger and resentment for so long that it twists into something dangerous. That Grandma Eleanor had never approved of me, and that resentment had grown into something terrible. That what she'd done was wrong, unforgivable, and that there would be consequences. "Do we have to hate her now?" Marcus asked. He was 14, old enough to understand the gravity, but young enough to still want simple answers. "No," I said firmly. "You don't have to hate anyone. But you do have to understand that actions have consequences. What Grandma did was criminal. She will face justice for that, and our relationship with her will never be the same. That doesn't mean you can't love her, but it does mean you have to see her clearly." Thomas came home late that night, looking 10 years older. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for this family, and he cried. "I should have believed you," he said. "All these years when you said Mom was cruel to you, I thought you were exaggerating. I thought it was just personality conflict. I never imagined—" "You couldn't have imagined," I said. "No one imagines their mother is capable of murder." "How did you know to switch the plates?" he asked. I told him everything. About seeing her pour the poison, about the split-second decision to turn her plan against her, about knowing that if I'd simply accused her, she would have denied it, and everyone would have doubted me. But by forcing her to face her own poisoned plate, by putting her in the position of either eating it or confessing, I'd exposed her. "You could have died," Thomas said, his voice breaking, "if you hadn't seen her, if you'd eaten that food." "But I did see her," I said. "And I didn't die. She did this to herself, Thomas. All I did was hold up a mirror. The legal process took months. Eleanor was formally charged with attempted murder. Her lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, that her age and her heart attack had affected her judgment. But the prosecution had her hardware store purchase. Her history of hostility toward me, documented in old emails and texts they subpoenaed, and the testimony of 17 witnesses who'd heard her confession. She pleaded guilty to attempted manslaughter in a deal that gave her 10 years, eligible for parole after 6. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked at Eleanor with barely concealed disgust. "You are a danger to your own family," she said at sentencing. You let pride and prejudice turn you into someone who could commit murder over Thanksgiving dinner. You will serve your time, and you will live with the knowledge that you destroyed your family's trust forever. Thomas's siblings divided into camps. Diane stood by me completely, apologizing repeatedly for not seeing her mother's cruelty. Thomas's brother, Richard, tried to maintain Switzerland neutrality, visiting Eleanor in prison while remaining civil to me. The youngest sister, Patricia, blamed me. If you hadn't switched the plates, none of this would have happened. I didn't bother arguing with her. Some people will always shoot the messenger. The kids struggled. Jennifer started therapy to process the trauma of watching her grandmother get arrested. Marcus became protective of me in a way that broke my heart. He shouldn't have had to worry about his mother's safety. Sophie had nightmares for months, but we survived. We adapted. We healed. Thomas and I went to marriage counseling. We had to rebuild trust that had been eroded by years of him dismissing my concerns about his mother. He had to learn to truly hear me, to believe me, to choose me. It wasn't easy. There were nights I wasn't sure we'd make it. But slowly, painfully, we found our way back to each other. I quit my job at the hospital. Too many people knew the story, wanted to gossip, asked intrusive questions. I took a position at a small private practice, treating children with chronic illnesses. Quieter work. Meaningful work. Work that reminded me why I became a nurse in the first place. We stopped celebrating Thanksgiving at Eleanor's house. Obviously. The first Thanksgiving after her sentencing, we went to a restaurant, neutral territory, no painful memories. The second year, we hosted at our house, just our immediate family. Jennifer made the turkey. Marcus made his grandmother's stuffing recipe, his other grandmother, my mother, who'd loved him unconditionally his whole life. Sophie made place cards with everyone's names and little drawings. It wasn't the same as those big Whitmore gatherings. But it was ours, and it was honest. Eleanor writes letters from prison, long rambling letters to Thomas, trying to explain, to justify, to apologize. He reads them, then files them away. He visits her twice a year, out of some sense of duty. I don't go. I don't need to. I don't hate her. Hate requires too much energy. But I don't forgive her either. Some actions are simply unforgivable. The kids ask sometimes if they can visit her. I don't forbid it. They're old enough to make their own choices. Jennifer went once, came back subdued and never asked again. Marcus writes her occasional letters, carefully supervised by Thomas. Sophie says she wants to wait until she's older to decide. I think about that Thanksgiving a lot. About the moment I saw her poison my food. About the choice I made to switch our plates instead of confronting her directly. Some people have asked if I feel guilty. If, by forcing her to face her own poison, I caused her heart attack. The answer is no. I didn't put poison in anyone's food. I didn't spend 26 years cultivating hatred. I didn't let pride rot my soul into something capable of murder. Eleanor did all of that herself. I simply refused to be her victim. The truth is, switching those plates was the first time in 26 years that I truly stood up to Eleanor Whitmore. Not by screaming or demanding respect, but by quietly, cleverly turning her weapon back on her. She'd spent decades trying to poison my marriage, my confidence, my place in the family. That Thanksgiving, she tried to make it literal, and in stopping her, I finally freed myself from her power. Thomas and I are okay now. Better than okay, actually. Removing Eleanor's toxic influence from our marriage was like finally being able to breathe clean air after years in a smoke-filled room. We laugh more. We talk more honestly. We're building something new on the ruins of what almost was destroyed. My mother, bless her, told me something wise. Eleanor didn't hate you because you weren't good enough. She hated you because you were exactly good enough, and that terrified her. You showed her that her son didn't need her money or her name or her approval to be happy. That's what she couldn't forgive. Maybe that's true. Maybe Eleanor saw in me everything she'd been told she couldn't be. Independent, accomplished on my own terms, loved for who I was rather than what I represented. Maybe watching her son choose that over her version of perfection was more than her pride could bear. Or maybe she was just a cruel woman who let her cruelty fester until it became murderous. I'll never know for sure, and honestly, I don't need to know. Her motivations are her burden to carry, not mine. What I do know is this: I'm alive. My children are safe. My marriage survived. and Eleanor Whitmore will spend the next several years in prison, thinking about the Thanksgiving she tried to kill her daughter-in-law and ended up destroying her own life instead. That's justice. Not the kind you see in movies, with dramatic courtroom speeches and tearful reconciliations, but real justice, the kind where actions have consequences, and the truth, no matter how long it takes, eventually comes to light. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect,